Welcome to our video on JSON components which are available with our KingswaySoft SSIS productivity pack. In this demonstration, we will be going over the following: JSON source, JSON extract, JSON merge, and JSON destination component which are in the data flow, and JSON extract task which is in the control flow. Before we begin, I am going to create a KingswaySoft HTTP connection manager which we will be using in few places. Here, I am entering a mock URL which when tested connection will always succeed and return a JSON response with a proper document design that we can use in our tests. In order to know more about the HTTP connection manager, please refer to the links provided in the video's description. Now, let's search for JSON source component and drag and drop it from the SSIS toolbox into the designer area. The JSON source component is used to retrieve JSON documents from an HTTP URL or a local file or from a variable, break up the structure of the documents and produce column data, which can then be consumed by a downstream SSIS pipeline component. Double-click and open the component UI. The connection manager property can either be set to an HTTP connection manager, a local file, or an SSIS variable. Let's begin by choosing the HTTP connection manager which we had created, and the UI will display request settings that are used to determine the content of HTTP requests. The HTTP method denotes the one that will be used to send requests. Default methods include get, post, put, delete, patch. The relative path is the second part of the URL that will be used to make the HTTP request. It is combined with the base path from the connection manager to form the full path. The relative path can contain query string parameters, but they can also be added individually in the grid below. Clicking on the FX button next to it will open up the expression editor, and in here you can switch to the expression mode and work with the available functions and variables to parameterize the property. Query string parameters are those that will be appended to the full path or next to the relative path when sending HTTP requests. You could click on the plus sign and add the required query string parameters. The FX button next to it does the same as what we discussed above, to parameterize the query string parameter using variables and available functions. You could add more lines here depending on your endpoint requirements. The request again rule allows page data to be retrieved. After each request, the request again rule is evaluated, and if it evaluates to true, another request will be sent. If the rule evaluates to false or is left blank, no more requests will be sent. For instance, if the endpoint we work with has a HashMode node that needs to be parsed and evaluated to see if it exists, then you could click on the FX button next to it and switch to expression mode and write the expression. The preceding request folder and the functions that are supported makes it easier to customize the expression. You may also need to change the query string parameter respectively to suit with the request again rule. And parameterizing the properties may be a good idea to have the pagination running till the last page. Preceding request folder in the expression mode allows you to reference some parameters from the previous response, such as access token, get value from previous response headers, request count, response body, response status code, and value exists from previous response headers. Along with this, the max identical property will raise an error if a certain number of identical requests are sent. The purpose of this feature is to prevent accidentally sending the same request in a never-ending loop. Clicking on the preview button, you will see that the relative path is appended to the base URL from the HTTP connection manager, and the query string parameter comes after that. The request headers tab allows you to enter parameters that will be combined with the headers in the connection manager and included with the HTTP requests. And the request body tab is useful when you wish to send a body in the request. The document designer page allows you to build the design of the document you're trying to read or import the design from an existing document. Taking a look at the node type, you would see that it shows array, object, value, and raw. Depending on the JSON document and how it should be modified, these can be changed as required. The node name will have the name of the node in the document. The output/column name will show the name which will be set for the output or the column of a node. The output type shows the type of output for a node, and the available options are column, variable, property name as column value, key value pivot. And output settings option allows you to specify the settings for each output, such as the data type of value node types. Clicking on Show All Columns will show some additional columns such as is repeated. This option allows you to specify if a node is repeated within a document. The Import option allows you to import the design of your document from one of the following 4 sources: Designer Settings, JSON Local File, JSON Web, JSON Schema Local File. In the Additional Settings tab, you would find the following options. Encoding. This would be the encoding of the document that will be retrieved. Null mode. This allows you to specify the null values are handled. Is repeated text qualifier. This option allows you to specify the text qualifier used in a document when the is repeated property is set to true for one or more nodes. There are 4 options available: double quote, single quote, tick, and none. Is repeated text delimiter. This option allows you to specify the text delimiter used in a document when the is repeated property is set to true for one or more nodes. Output time zone. The output time zone option lets you specify how all datetime fields should be retrieved. Available options are UTC, local, and finally, there is also an option to suggest whether the node names are case insensitive. As you can see, once the document is imported, you will find the columns page having output columns based on the designer. If you change the output type in few nodes, you will find that the columns page has changed accordingly too. For example, make profile node as an output, and in columns page, it has its own output and metadata. This is helpful in managing the data as required. The advanced page of the JSON source component shows you additional options when retrieving data from a JSON. This has the option Enable HTTP request output to get additional details to debug the HTTP request and the response. And Allow data truncation option will apply to all output columns. However, in order to enable data truncation on a certain column, then you would disable this option and enable data truncation in the column's properties using the component's advanced editor. Click on OK and save and close the component, and drag and drop a dummy destination component and connect the JSON source output to it. As you can see, it prompts to choose from root, profile, and HTTP requests. Root and profile are the 2 separate outputs our document designer had, and HTTP requests is due to the option we had checked in the advanced page. Drag and drop 2 other dummy destination components and connect all outputs. Opening the respective data flow pipelines, you would notice that it contains the metadata for each. Note that the row index and parent key fields that you see in the metadata are used to preserve and connect the parent and child lines as required, and the HTTP request output contains the requests and responses related information. Next, in the JSON source component, let's choose local file as the connection manager. This allows you to browse to a local folder path and select a JSON file. Once selected, it gives an option whether to import the document designer. Click on OK to load the JSON design in the document designer page. You could also import it separately if you wish to. Now, the file content in variable connection manager option is specifically used when the JSON that you wish to read is stored in a variable at runtime. This is useful in cases where a JSON document is read from any location and is required to be handled and parsed in memory and not using a local path. Let's go back to our original design with the HTTP connection manager and run the data flow by clicking on execute task. As you can see, the data is parsed out successfully and in a tabular format as expected. Next, let's move on to the JSON extract component. The JSON extract component is similar to the JSON source component functionally, but it's a transformation component that receives JSON documents from an upstream component, extracts the data from the received JSON documents based on one, and produces column data for the SSIS pipeline. In order to demonstrate, we use a table as our data source using our premium SQL Server source component. The employee details column in the source has JSON document inside it, which we would need to parse out as a part of our use case. In the designer, drag and drop the JSON extract component from the SSIS toolbox and connect the source and double-click to open the component. You would notice that it does not have a general page since it's not required for it to work as a transformation component. The document designer page has options for you to add the nodes yourself or to import as we did in the JSON source. And in the additional settings tab, you can set the document input column. This is important for the component to recognize which column from the input pipeline has the JSON document inside it. You would also find the following options in this tab: encoding, null mode, is repeated text qualifier, and there are 4 options available: double quote, single quote, tick, none. Is repeated text delimiter, and there are 7 options available: new line, carriage return, semicolon, colon, comma, tab, vertical bar, output time zone, and the available options are UTC and local. And finally, there is also an option to suggest whether the node names are case insensitive. Let's go back to the details view and click on import and select JSON local file. From the browser window that opens up, choose the file. The document designer page will be filled with the nodes as per the JSON document selected. Here, you could change the details as per your requirement. Like, say for example, if you need to handle the document as parent and child lines, then you can set multiple outputs. This would depend on specific nature of your business use case. You will find the columns page having output columns based on the designer. If you change the output type in few nodes, you will find that the columns page has changed accordingly too. For example, make 1 or more nodes as an output, and in columns page, it will have its own output and metadata. This is helpful in managing the data as required. The advanced page of the JSON extract component shows you additional options when retrieving data from a JSON document column. This has error handling capability, where default is set to fail on error, and you could choose to redirect rows to error output or to ignore errors. And the allow data truncation option will apply to all output columns. Let's choose redirect rows to error output and click on OK to save and close the component. Now drag and drop a dummy destination component and connect the JSON extract outputs to it. It has only one output, as our JSON document has just one. And connect the error output to another dummy destination component. Let's execute the task, and you can see that the JSON data from the input column we have passed to the JSON extract component has been parsed and output as individual columns in a tabular format. In this way, JSON documents within a data flow can be easily extracted and handled. Next, let's move on to the JSON destination component. With this component, you can specify to write the merged JSON document to a local file, or you can send it to an HTTP URL to perform a RESTful service call. Before we begin, we have 3 data spawners, company, department, and employee, respectively, which would serve as the sources. From the SSIS toolbox, drag and drop the JSON destination component to the designer area. Before connecting the inputs, double-click and open the component. The connection manager supports both HTTP connection manager and local file. This would be to either send an HTTP request with the merged JSON or to write the same to a local file. Choosing local file would give you the option to set the target destination in the local file path where you wish to write the JSON file to. Let's choose HTTP connection manager for our demonstration. And now set the HTTP method that would be used in the request. The available ones are get, post, put, delete, patch. Let's select post. The relative path is the second part of the URL that will be used to make the HTTP request. It is combined with the base path from the connection manager to form the full path. The relative path can contain query string parameters, but they can also be added individually in the grid below. As we had seen in the JSON source example, the FX button against the field can be used to parameterize the option. Enter the query string parameters that will be appended to the full path when sending the HTTP request, and provide the request headers that will be combined with the headers in the connection manager and included in the HTTP requests. Now, the request body tab will have merged JSON mentioned in it. This represents the JSON that will be formed as a result of input data that merged with respect to the document designer that we imported. Let's move to the document designer page. This page allows you to build the design of the document you are trying to write to, and also allows you to import the design from an existing document. The page includes the following 4 tabs: Details View, Diagram View, Preview, and Additional Settings. In the Details View tab, the top part of the page is used to manually configure the nodes in the design. Let's click on Import and import our JSON file, which has the structure that needs to be merged and sent as request using our input data. The details view grid consists of few fields like node type, node name, input/column name, format string, source type, and node write settings to specifically customize and handle the JSON document nodes. Once we have the document designer ready, let's save and close the component and then connect our inputs. At prompts, choose the right input for its respective node. Double-click and open the component, and let's get back to the document designer page. In the diagram view tab, you would be able to view the document design as a diagram where you can link different inputs with each other in order to create the hierarchy of your document and establish relationships between the different inputs. By default, when there are parent and child nodes, the link ID is present in the parent, which will have a parent name link ID as its reference in its immediate child. Here, company is the parent, which is the root, and departments is the immediate child, and hence it has the root link ID. And in employees, which is department's corresponding child, department link ID is its key for its parent that has its own link ID. Double-click on the relationship stated in node write settings and find this in more one-to-one manner for better understanding. And you can delete and recreate your own parent-child relationship using any field of your choice. Note that it would be ideal for it to be an existing key field in both parent and child. In the Preview tab, the component will show a sample of the document which will be created with test values. In the Additional Settings tab, you would find the following options, which determines how the JSON document would be written: encoding, null mode, empty array mode, empty object mode, print ready, link IDs are scrambled, which can be checked if the link IDs are scrambled, merge mode. This option is important and there are 3 modes: every row, every batch, and entire buffer. Next property available is batch size, which is available when the every batch merge mode is selected, is repeated text qualifier, is repeated text delimiter. In the Details View tab, you can also choose Filter Columns, drop down and select Show All Columns to see some additional fields like Is Repeated field, in which you can specify if the node is repeated within the document. Moving to the next page, the Input Columns page of the JSON destination component allows you to map the columns from upstream components to the defined nodes of the document. You can see drop-down for different inputs that we have connected, and in each of them would be its respective metadata. Let's map them as required with the mandatory link IDs that we had defined in the node settings previously. Next page is the output columns, and in here, the columns that needs to be output from the JSON destination component can be configured. The values of output columns will be extracted from the response of any HTTP requests that are sent. Output columns are typically used to get success or ID information about items that were created or updated or deleted on the server. You could click on the plus icon in the grid to add new output columns and its relative path, or JPath to extract the node as a column out of the response JSON document. The responses array option can be checked if the HTTP response will contain an array with items corresponding to your input rows. If your response contains an array, the response collection base path property will be the JPath that will return the items in the array. If your response is an array, then a strategy must be selected to match input rows to response array items. Sequential strategy. If this strategy is selected, it is assumed that there are an equal number of input rows and output array items, and they are matched in the order they appear. Item key strategy. Use this strategy when the output array items are not in the same order as the input rows. Selecting the strategy will allow you to define an item key below, which will determine how input rows are matched to output array items. You could click on the FX button to open up the expression editor and use the current batch folder to use the items within it to work with the current batch of the response. Checking or unchecking the HTTP diagnostics output columns will add or remove HTTP-related additional output columns. The following columns are available: HTTP request URL, HTTP request method, HTTP request headers, HTTP request body, HTTP response code, HTTP response code name, HTTP response headers, and HTTP response body. The error handling page allows you to specify how errors should be handled when they happen, along with the name of the output column that will contain the merged JSON. There are 3 options available: fail on error, redirect rows to error output, and ignore error. Let's choose the second option and click on OK to save and close the component. Drag and drop two dummy destination components, connect the blue line, which is the default output, to one, and the red line, which is the error output, to the other. Opening the data flow metadata for the default output, you would see the input fields along with the output columns that we had defined, including the diagnostic columns. And in the error output metadata, you would see the diagnostic columns as well as error code, error column, and error message along with the input fields. And using a third dummy destination, you could also capture the orphaned children error output. Now, we move on to the JSON merge component. The JSON merge component is a transformation component used to take incoming data from upstream SSIS source components and merge them into one SSIS column based on the JSON data structure defined in the component, which can then be consumed by a downstream pipeline component. For this demonstration, let's use the same input data that we used for our JSON destination previously. From the SSIS toolbox, drag and drop a JSON merge component and double-click to open it. The document designer page allows you to build the design of the document you're trying to write to, or to import the design from an existing document. The page includes the following 4 tabs: Details View, Diagram View, Preview, Additional Settings. In the Details View tab, the top part of the page is used to manually configure the nodes in the design. Let's click on Import and import our JSON file, which has the structure that needs to be merged and sent as request using our input data. The Details View grid consists of few fields like node type, node name, input/column name, format string, source type, and node write settings to specifically customize and handle the JSON document nodes. Once we have the document designer ready, let's save and close the component and then connect our inputs. At prompts, choose the right input for its respective node. Double-click and open the component, and let's go back to the document designer page. In the diagram view, you would be able to view the document design as a diagram where you can link different inputs from each other in order to create the hierarchy of your document and establish relationships between the different inputs. By default, when there are parent and child nodes, the link ID is present in the parent, which will have a parent name link ID as its reference in its immediate child. Here, in our example, company is the parent, which is a root, and departments is the immediate child, and hence it has the root link ID. And in employees, which is department's corresponding child, department link ID is its key for its parent that has its own link ID. In the preview tab, the component will show a sample of the document which will be created with test values. In the additional settings tab, you would find the following options similar to what we had seen previously in the JSON destination component: encoding, null mode, empty array mode, empty object mode, print ready, link IDs are scrambled, merge mode, which has 3 modes, every row, every batch, entire buffer, and then the next property available is batch size, is repeated text qualifier, is repeated text delimiter. Going back to the details page, you can double-click on the relationship stated in node write settings and find this in more one-to-one manner for better understanding. And you can delete and recreate your own parent-child relationship using any field of your choice. Note that it would be ideal for it to be an existing key field in both parent and child. In diagram view, you would see that it's changed as well. Once we have the document designer ready, let's save and close the component and then connect to our inputs. At prompts, choose the right input for its respective node. Double-click and open the component, and let's go back to the columns page. In here, you can choose the parent and child node inputs and perform the mappings for each metadata. Now, we move over to the output and error handling page. This page allows you to specify how errors should be handled when they happen, along with the name of the output column that will contain the merged JSON. You can change the merged JSON column if you wish to name it as something specific. For error handling, there are 3 options available: fail on error, redirect rows to error output, and ignore error. Let's choose the second option and click on OK to save and close the component. Drag and drop 3 dummy destination components. connect the blue line, which is the default output, to one, and the red line, which is the error output, to the second one, and another red line, which is the orphaned children error output, to the third one. Opening the data flow metadata for default output, you would see merge JSON field available, and in the error output metadata for both error and orphaned error output, you would see the error code, error column, and error message along with the parent input name and column name. Now, let's move on to the JSON extract task. Drag and drop the JSON extract task from the SSIS toolbox while you are in the control flow. Double-click to open it, and let's configure the general page first. The JSON extract task requires a connection in order to connect to the web service. The Connection Manager dropdown will show a list of all HTTP connection managers that are available to your current SSIS package, along with the local file type as well as file content and variable. We will be going over HTTP connection manager type in this demonstration, but local file type would let you choose a local file to read the JSON document and extract it, and the file content and variable type would let you choose a variable that has a raw JSON content in it. Once you choose the connection manager, you get to pick the code page. Note that this lets you set the code page and is applicable mainly when you have a file chosen. And then, you could pick the HTTP method from the list. We choose get in our example. Moving on to the relative path, this field allows you to specify a string containing the relative location of the URL that the request will be sent to. The base URL comes from the connection manager. The query string parameters grid allows you to add query string parameters and values that will be appended to the URL of the request. Say for example, the filtering needs to happen on change send state value, and there is a limit of 100. You can assign it here. The request headers grid allows you to add HTTP headers that will be used for the request. The request body tab allows you to configure the body of your request. If the connection manager is using the get method, such as when downloading files, the body would typically be left empty. And for a method like post, patch, etc., it would be available. Note that by clicking on the FX button, the properties can be parameterized. Next, in the output page, we can set the JPath for the nodes that we wish to read, along with the variable to which the value will be written to. And these variables can be used in succeeding data flows. You can also click on New Variable option to create a new one if you wish to. The error on not found checkbox can be checked if you wish to handle nodes not found as an error. In the error handling page, there are three options: fail on error, write error to variable, and ignore error. To handle errors, you can select the second option and assign a variable to it. We hope the above demonstration has helped you understand how our JSON components and tasks work. KingswaySoft, data integration made easy.